Buenos días, buenas noches en el lugar que ustedes estén. Hoy tenemos una muy importante invitado al Rabino Dovid Weiss de la organización eh, judía ortodoxa Naturei Carta, y a quien tuve el placer de conocer aquí en Buenos Aires hace unos años. No nos acordábamos cuántos años, ninguno de los dos, ahora hablando en off. Pero bueno, es un honor para mí tenerlo, y ahora vamos a empezar hablando en inglés, así que este video va a subir con los subtítulos. Rabbi Weiss, it is an honor for me to have you here with in Voces Alternativas, my YouTube channel, which is a continuation of the Voz Alternativa channel, which I had back in 2008, where I uploaded some very viral videos. The first time that Norman Finkelstein and others were translated to Spanish, and they became viral, thanks God, for the cause of the poor Palestinian suffering. And I'm very pleased and honored to have you here. Thank you very much. And I'm going to try not to make the typical interview to Rabbi Weiss, and try to make a different kind of approach to you. But first of all, I wanted to say hello and be thankful that you gave me this hour.
Gracias. Thank you very much for having me on the program. It is an honor and a privilege, and I hope, and I pray to the Almighty, He should bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I may convey His message, and so we should be able to sanctify His name and bring peace to the world. It is critical for this message to be comprehended, to be heard, and the world to understand what this terrible now that with the Nakba, this terrible colossal catastrophe is I would say one of the main weapons of this catastrophe that's causing such colossal slaughter and death and suffering is because of the misnomer of the mistaken understanding in what the conflict is and what the whole turmoil is, and that has to be corrected with God's help. And the truth is clear, but it is unfortunately hidden from the world. We hope to reveal that to the world.
Absolutely, yes, it is like that, Rabbi. And it's so nice, at least for me and for people who have awareness and are conscious about the suffering of the Palestine people. It's so, how can I say it? My heart feels joy when I meet someone who is of Jewish faith and is in favor of the Palestinians, or not only in favor of the Palestinians, but in favor of peace, and acknowledges and knows and says the truth, because the basis of this state, this Zionist state, is the lie. They've always lied, and they've sequestered, they've kidnapped religion. I am a believer. I'm a Christian. I consider myself an independent Christian, and I don't belong to any church. But when I met you here in Buenos Aires, I could, there's something which is very, um, how can I say, very spiritual when you meet someone, and you see and you can feel that he's saying the truth, and he has a lot of mercy and goodness and forgiveness. And that's what you are. You are someone who has been smeared, and you have been, by the campaigns against you in the media, like anybody who defends Palestinian rights. We were talking about Norman Finkelstein before. But this is what I want to transmit at each of my Latin American audience, that you are a very nice person to meet, and that you are saying the truth. So it would be very interesting for me to begin with a different perspective. I've seen many of your interviews, obviously. And first, I would like to. We will go back surely to talk about Zionism and their power in the media and how this has maintained the lie during all these years. And but I would like to ask you, because I'm an Argentinian, about our new president. It's hard for me to call him president, but this is a reality. He feels he's a Jew and he wants to become a full Jew, but he's influenced by this. I don't know what to call them. Jabad Lubavich. Could you talk about them? What do you know about Chabad Lubavitch? They are Zionist Orthodox Jews, are they?
Okay, so like I say, I pray to the Almighty He should give me His words, and that we should be able to convey His messages so quick. Every uh, fact and everything we say, we have to, it's we have to be very careful, and then and it should be not misunderstood with God's help. We actually, maybe if you would allow me, I'll just with God's help, very concise, try to just to basically explain what Judaism is and what Zionism is, because like you say, it's been a good couple of years since we've had this discussion, and I'm sure that you have an astute and intelligent and very informed audience, but it would be very impressive if they have to still remember all these the differences and of Judaism, what Zionism is, what Judaism is. Uh,
Okay, I'm having a little bit of
yeah, I don't know, Shayas.
the sound is not coming in very well, but please go on. I understood what you were
Yeah,
trying to say. You were trying
right.
to say there
Okay.
was a,
Yeah. Okay. Basically, Judaism is. First of all, and thank you so much. I'm humbled by what you said about me, and for the fine words. Would that it would be true that all of the praises you've said. Uh, but the issue is that it's really not about me. Of course, I'm just representing the basic core the Judaism, what Judaism is, and so maybe I'm getting attacked for being, we would say, like the horn, the shofar that says the words that it goes out of, but it's totally nothing personal with me. The whole issue that I'm representing, it's what Judaism is. Judaism is a religion of 3,000 years now. That Moshe Rabbeinu went on Mount Sinai when the Jews. God took the Jews out of Egypt with miracles, and there was 600,000 males of the age of 20 to 60 there. And that means that families that were the younger and the older and the women folks, so we're talking most probably over 1 million people, and they all witnessed the tremendous miracles of the splitting of the sea, the plagues, the 10 plagues, and God took them out of Egypt and stood by Mount Sinai, and Moses went up on Mount Sinai and took the Torah from the Almighty, and all the Jews standing there witnessed this themselves, and we're people of the book. There's never a gap in the history. It goes down. He gave it to his student Yehoshua, and then into the Canaan. He had a whole till today. How we have there was never a gap, and we write everything is we write, and nobody refuted what has happened over there. And we accepted this Torah from God, which is a covenant that we made with God to be subservient to God, to uphold 613 commandments of the Torah, and we. Promised, and to the Almighty He gives us life, and we will be bound by the laws of the Torah. And it's exactly God is above the concept of time. The Torah, which we consider the blueprint of the world, is above the concept of time. So it is just as relevant today as it was the time when Moses took it from Mount Sinai. The world changes, technology changes, but everything that how the technology and all the laws and all the issues of this world have to conform with the Torah, because the Torah is a constant, And like I say, it's just as fresh it was given as if it was given this minute. And therefore, the Jews who uphold the covenant, we do not dare to stray even one iota from the laws, from the holy books, the Torah. That is our life. This is our life, and we live and breathe by it. And to be subservient to God and follow the laws strictly. That is what Judaism is. Zionism is the total nemesis of this. It is the opposite. It is the contradiction to this. It is a pure nationalism. They proudly announce they're a democracy. They're free of obligation of being under the yoke of the acceptance of the laws of God's Torah. You don't have to keep the Sabbath. You don't have to keep any of the laws of kosher, of any morality or anything. They had their gay rights parade right in the center of Jerusalem. They did. That's not Judaism. Now, whatever it is, all these things that breach the laws of the Torah. So call themselves, they should give themselves a name, a nice name that's a very catchy phrase or something. Don't call it Judaism. Why are you giving yourself a name Judaism when in other words, you're simply using somebody else's identity, which is this subservience to God. And yet in being that it's a total nationalism, and they don't put themselves under the yoke of God, and so therefore they don't have the morals of God, and they can do whatever pleases them, whatever they feel they need to reach their goal of nationhood, of rule over the land that they picked for themselves. So if anything stands in the way, and it just has to get sacrificed on their altar of their goal of their nationhood. So they really, that they don't have any compunctions. They have no problem again with using somebody else's identity. Not only somebody else's identity, their grandparents' identity, the people who throughout the generations that we gave our lives, because in order to uphold this Torah, there was the Inquisition, there was the Crusades, there was the times, many times through history, people were murdered. They were offered the choice to convert to Christianity, and by the time of the Inquisitions and other times, and they can live and live a life of prosperity. And the Jews said we chose to die for their religion. And here, a group.
Rabbi, excuse me. Sorry to interrupt you, but how do you think that this? I mean, Zionism is an ideology. It's a secular ideology, and that in history, at first, Judaism had wanted nothing to do with the creation of a state, and this is, anybody who has studied a little bit of history knows this. Now, how can it be that it was so successful, and you have all these settlers and these other people who call themselves Jewish, religious, with their costumes, with their dresses, or the way they dress, everything, and they are aggressive, and they hate the Palestinians, and they want to wipe them out. How can you explain that these people are so different from what your conception of Judaism?
Right.
They don't follow, you will not kill, the
Right.
commandments.
Yes.
I mean,
Again, just bear with me like 3 minutes. Again, this is we really wanted that it should be an intelligent. It should be a show that the people should be able to go away and understand fully what encompass the whole issue of it's a critical issue, this issue of the occupation, and not just to go away feeling okay, we have an opinion of somebody. So I'm just trying, it should be so clear.
okay.
So just bear with me. So again, like I was saying, so Judaism was the subservience to God, accepting the laws of the Torah, while Zionism is totally a concept of freedom of God, from God. It guts out the soul and the inner of what Judaism is. They're using a facade of Judaism. They took the identifying signs of Judaism, for instance, the Star of David, the name Israel, which is Jacob, and they're using this simply as a tool, in order to be able to legitimize a movement that's really just a nationalism, that a group of people decided they want to create a national home, and but in order to getting the support from the world, which they need mass support to create the country, to create the national home, and to stifle anybody who would have any questions or oppose what they're doing. So they took an old religion, a 3,000-year-old religion of Judaism, and which was accepted by in the Islamic religion, the Christian religion. They all believed in the Old Testament that God gave the children of Israel the land of Israel. So they simply found it very convenient to take this religion and this identity, and then when anybody comes and will question their creation of the state, where it interferes with the lives of the people that were living there prior to that creation of the state, they'll simply waive the Torah as a deed and say, hey, this is our home, our land, and the other people are interlopers. The people that are all here, they dismiss them. They're not legitimate. They have no right to be there. They're simple thieves. They came into our home, and they have a very strong deed and to do that, because they have a Torah that everybody knows, that's very old and was the basis of the other religions also. So this is why they're using the Torah. But again, the Torah is a 3,000-year-old religion that tells us that we are to recognize this one God, that we are to serve him and to emulate him, just as God is compassionate. You should be compassionate. We're not allowed to steal. We're not allowed to kill. And one of the main issues that really is poignant to our subject is the Almighty when he took us out of Egypt, he told us that we should go into the Holy Land because it's a holy land. And being that our whole purpose of life is to be subservient and close to God, we should go and build a temple. King Solomon built a temple, and we should serve him. We'll be close to God. Our body is to serve our soul, to be able to we eat and drink and everything, that we should have strength, sustenance, that we should be able to serve God. That is the purpose of our lives, to be close to God. And King Solomon built a temple, but he also wrote a book called Shir Hashirim, Song of Songs, in which he wrote a prophecy, and he said that there will come a time, there will be a destruction of this temple, maybe I'll go a little back from that. I'm sorry. Moses, when he took the Torah and brought this covenant with us, the commandments of the Torah, he warned us that we are going to be taken into the Holy Land, but we have to be in a high level of holiness in order to remain there as a nation. And if not, the land itself will reject us, because it is a holiness. It is a holy land. It's close to God. And just like a body rejects a foreign object, same thing will happen. We will be thrown out of the land as a nation. Individuals will be able to live there, but as a nation will. And King Solomon went afterwards, built the temple, that we should be close to God. But he warned us that this prophecy, as many of the other prophets, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, all of them warned the Jews that they're not on that level that they should be, and therefore will be driven from the land as a nation. And that came about later with the destruction of the temple. King Solomon built the temple. It wasn't destroyed in his life, but he wrote a prophecy about this. And we were warned that when the time comes and we will be rejected from the land as a nation, it will be because of our sins, not because of our physical lacking, not because we're not strong. It was simply because it's a decree of God. God rules the world. Then we were warned, we are under oath. We are not to return en masse, in large numbers. We're not to rebel against any nation. We're to be loyal citizens in every country reside. We are not to make any attempt to end exile. And for 2,000 years, since the destruction of the temple, King Solomon built the temple after we went in to the Holy Land, and then went through a period of time. There was two temples. His temple was destroyed. Then the Jews went back. Then the second temple was destroyed. This ended around 2,000 years ago. So we are a period of 2,000 years of an exilic existence dispersed amongst the nations, and the Jews who are close to God, who are serving and upholding the Torah as we are required to. Not only in the Holy Land, we were required to hold the Torah. We are to uphold the Torah, and we strictly adhere to the laws of the Torah. We know that it's the decree of God, this exile, and we are forbidden to try to seek a solution to our problems in exile, to our suffering in exile. We are forbidden to attempt to reestablish any Jewish sovereignty, and it was respected and upheld throughout the generations. That's a fact. Now, we had the opportunity in Spain, and there were times it was called the golden age of Judaism, that the Jews had the money to be able to buy a piece of land, but they never did it because, as the rabbis warned us through the ages, you can't. God is compassionate. He sees you suffering, but the solution is not to take matter in your own hands and reestablish a Jewish state. That's not what God wants from us. He wants us to serve him. When the time will come, ultimately, we believe God will make a metaphysical change in the world where all humanity will stop being atheists. Everybody will believe in God and serve God in harmony. Not become Jewish, but everybody will serve God in harmony, and God himself will rebuild the temple. That is why, for these period, let's just say the last 1,000 years, when Jews were suffering terribly, let's say in Europe, and they tried to forcibly convert Jews to Christianity. The Muslim, and they were banished from many lands in Europe. The Muslim countries embraced the Jews. Now they were scholars. They knew my religion. They knew, so if they felt we were a danger to their existence, they wouldn't have taken us in. But they had no problem. They respected us, and the Jews, with the distinctly different religion than Islam, we lived together in peace and harmony. Why? Because they know that Jews don't aspire and do not want in any manner whatsoever to take over the land and create our own sovereignty. So Jews lived under the Ottoman Empire, and in fact, there was a period that Jerusalem was under the Christian rule, and then Solomon the Great, Solomon the Great, or whatever, they took, I believe, he allowed the Jews to come back in, and was on the Muslim rule, on the Ottoman Empire, and the Jews lived door by door in the same courtyards throughout hundreds of years, Jews and Muslims together in peace and harmony. Why? Because the difference of religion is not an impediment in any manner, shape, or form of our coexistence. We babysat each other's children. We helped each other. There's so many beautiful anecdotes from the Muslims and from the Jews, from the older generations. We'll talk about how we coexisted. Simple. That's a fact. Zionism comes along. Now, wait. So Judaism tells us that we are forbidden to reestablish even 1 inch, 1 centimeter of a Jewish sovereignty. It doesn't matter if it would be in Argentina, Patagonia. Patagonia is one of the plans of the Zionists to make the state. Or
Theodore Herzl.
Or Uganda or Jerusalem. It doesn't matter. We are forbidden. And certainly, we are not to make a state by killing or stealing, which is another prohibitions of the Torah, not to kill and not to steal. So when the Zionists, first, they wanted to make their planned national home in Uganda, Patagonia, but then they decided practically they need a massive amount of support from the world, and the Christian, evangelistic Christians, and the unaffiliated Jews who don't know the Torah, they will support them if they go to Palestine. So they decided to go to Palestine. There was a technical problem. Forget about the fact that all the rabbis and said what you're doing is heresy and it's rebellion against God. But let's just put that aside. But they had another technical problem, that it was inhabited by many people living there. So now that's problem. A small technicality. So, but it was before smartphones. It was before everybody had the information in front of them. So they simply went and reported that it was a land without a people, for a people without a land. Yes, but people heard and saw that there's some problems going on there in their attempt to take over the control of the land, and people were fighting them. So they said, "Oh, these are just a bunch of anti-Semites. They're just a bunch of Bedouins, camel-riding wild men who just don't like Jews, and they don't want them to have to settle in an empty land." So this was the narrative that the Zionists constantly harp and tell and sell, and they said it's just a bunch of people who are evil. So they vilify the people of Palestine. Now, so in every facet, in every way you look at Zionism, it is wrong. It is evil. And it is against God. It is against the teachings of the Torah. It is contradictory Torah. We're not allowed to have 1 inch of a Jewish sovereignty since 2,000 years ago. We're not allowed to kill or steal, and we are supposed to even, on top of that, show gratitude for people who did us good. It was the Muslim countries, it was the Ottoman Empire, it was these people that embraced us, and we flourished in every Arab and Muslim country. You can go till today, go to Egypt, go to Iran, go to Yemen, go to wherever you like. All this, you'll see the synagogues that were there for hundreds of years. Prior to any human rights groups to protect us, we could have been massacred. We lived in all these countries and flourished, and we put out our greatest Torah authorities, our greatest rabbis, our greatest leaders came from these countries. So how did that happen? We have a difference of religion. Why weren't we massacred by the Muslims? If you're going to take an, obviously, I mean, we're not condoning, but if you're going to take an Israeli soldier and put him right now in the middle of the streets of Gaza, he would disappear. I mean, why? Because of all the evil that's being done by them. So now imagine that if the Jews have, if the whole issue, the core problem is because the Muslims have this ingrained hate for Jews and so forth. How did they live for hundreds of years under the Muslims? So obviously somebody
is lying. Somebody is changing the history.
Totally, that's changing the narrative. It's pure bunk. It's false. So this is what I'm. So this is why Zionism comes along. A group of people 100-odd years ago, totally non-religious in its essence. There was Theodor Herzl, Jabotinsky, and then there was Chaim Weizmann later, and there was Ben Gurion. All these people, non-religious. They wanted a national home. They detested the religion. They threw it away, and they came along. They wanted this national home, so they decided to take in Palestine. They established it. Yet they're afraid of the repercussions. People are going to say, you can't take a land from people. So they yell anti-Semitism. These people hate the Jews. And it became, beyond comprehension, it became stronger and stronger, this claim, even though that everybody has a smartphone and they see the inhumanity, the way what is happening today in the last 7 months in Gaza.
It's horrible, satanic, diabolical.
And instead of saying that the students around the world who are standing up now and talking and pleading, instead of saying, wow, let's hear what they're saying. So they keep on trying to weapon and vilify them as anti-Semitic and making new rules and resolutions.
Yes, can I interrupt you just for a second, because I'm trying to remember how I want to ask you, because
I'll get to so many things.
So many things that are so valuable. I don't want to forget about the students issue and the use.
I will get back to that.
I can't conceive that they are still using this blackmail of anti-Semitism, which is childish. I mean, it's such a lie, because I suppose you know about Arthur Koestler, Shlomo Sand, and Semites. The Arabs are Semites. And maybe you have you read Shlomo Sand, the historian?
I know what he's writing, but that's a separate issue. But the point is, I'm not even going to get into the semantics of what a Semite is, because let's just take the word that the world accepted, that anti-Semitic means against Jews. I'm not going to get into that side issue. It's
blackmail. I mean, this is just trying to justify. They use that card of anti-Semitism, and it's ridiculous. I mean,
it's repugnant. It's not only it's ridiculous. Would be if it wouldn't be the evil, and the harm that's coming out of this accusation. Then we could talk it as a comedy and talk about it that it's ridiculous. But unfortunately, it's not. It's horrendous. It's
it's a fallacy.
Yeah, but the evil that is emanating from this is beyond words, because we have here. Again, I'm going to be very short. But the Jewish people, right away from day one, stood up in opposition. There was the 3 communities that were living in Palestine. The largest community was Muslim, the second largest was Christian, and the third, the smaller of the three, were the Jewish community. Now, all three were people, we're talking about religious communities, and the Jewish
Yes.
community was a God-fearing community, and
True religious, true religious.
they opposed
Because we
Zionism.
got fake religious now.
Right. Now, the chief rabbi of Palestine in the 1920s, 1910s, when the 1920s, was Rabbi Sonnenfeld of blessed memory, and met with the king of Transjordan to profess and express his definite opposition to Zionism and saying, this is not us. We're not aspiring to take the Temple Mount, to take the Al-Aqsa Mosque and so forth. We have his writing. He wrote it in Arabic in the Al-Salam newspaper. We put out even like a little pamphlets about each issue individually. And where we have the writing where he wrote in he was the rabbi from 1840. He lived from 1848 to 1932. That is before the establishment of the state. And in 1929, he was chief rabbi again of this community in Palestine, and he issued a statement in Arabic in a local Arabic newspaper called Al-Salam, and he wrote, the Jews do not want in any way to take that which isn't theirs. They certainly don't want to contest the right of the other inhabitants to the places held by them, which they regard with honor and consider holy. In particular, there is no foundation to the rumor that the Jews want to acquire the Temple Mount. On the contrary, from the time that because of our sins, we were exiled from our land, our holy temple was destroyed, which I mentioned, right? And we have been lacking the purity required by the Torah. It is forbidden for any Jewish person to set foot upon the grounds of the Temple Mount until the coming of the righteous Messiah. And it goes on and on. Basically, this is the view of Judaism. And Sharon went, Prime Minister of Israel, went along with 1,000 soldiers to make a statement, a political statement on a temple that's considered that if we go onto the Temple Mount, we get cut off from God. That's how bad it is, a prohibition in Judaism. Now, wait, he passed on, this rabbi. It's a lifetime job. The next chief rabbi was Rabbi Dushinsky of blessed memory. Rabbi Dushinsky was a very holy man also, and he lived at the time right before the establishment of the state, the ratification by the United Nations, and he pleaded with the delegation of the United Nations in July 16, 1947. Remember, 1948 was the establishment of the state. And he said, we furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine, representing the whole Jewish community, mind you. Now, wait, I just want to show, he passed on, we took up another tribe. You can see the tens of thousands of Jews there in the streets of Jerusalem, taking up another chief rabbi. Jews, boys and girls, this is the history till today, get arrested because they refuse to serve in the Israeli army. They get brutally beaten. Children, old men, rabbis, distinguished rabbis, assassinated, beaten, arrested. By who? By what they call Israeli Defense Force, IDF.
Oh, yeah.
They're defending
the Israeli genocidal forces.
Look what is going on here. And the world is silent. Not just the Palestinians. They keep on telling the world that they're carrying guns and the terrorists. What is about these religious Jews who are giving their lives as peaceful people? Why are they trampled with horses? Why do they kill them? Why are they doing this?
Yeah,
for
we see
75
videos.
years?
We can see videos of how
Right.
the rabbis there in Israel are beaten up by the police. By the
They're
Israeli
sprayed with this stink spray to destroy their clothes, to discourage, on and on and on. So basically, here you see in the streets of Jerusalem, stop the Zionist terrorist massacre in Gaza. These are on the streets of Jerusalem. Basically,
Are they Neturei Kata also, or
Jews,
brothers?
the Jews invariably around the world, wherever you will find a very religious community, the more the religious, the more they know their religion, and if they're practicing their religion, the more vociferous they'll be in their anti-Zionism, and the more, that's certain, the more the religious, the more anti-Zionist. You will go to New York, right here where I am. You come right across from Manhattan. It's called Williamsburg, Brooklyn, the largest concentration of religious Jews. There's not one single Israeli flag. Now, they're giving their lives for their Judaism. They're paying for the Jewish education, which they have large families, for kosher, for everything. And yet, and if it would be such a critical issue of what Zionists say, the state of Israel, it's like the core, it's part of the integral part of Judaism. So how come they're not supporting it? How come they're against it? They're giving their lives for their Judaism. The same as in Mea Sharm, the same as in London. In Argentina, you have a beautiful little community that is it's called Rabbi Eckstein's community or so, and they're very religious. and they are
I think I
anti-Zionist.
met one of the rabbis who came with you from. He was from Birmingham, Cohen.
Rabbi Cohen was from
Yeah.
Manchester, England. Yeah,
Oh,
and
Manchester,
right
Manchester.
now here you have, just to show when they established the state of Israel, David Ben Gurion reading the Declaration of Independence in 1948. So it's a historical moment. Look at this. When you would make a Muslim state, you would have imams. You would make a Christian state, you have priests. None of them are
It could
even.
have been. It
You
could
don't
have been
see them
so
covering
different,
their
but
heads.
it could have been so different. But they took into account the Balfour Declaration, and it was of the interest of the British
Right.
Empire
But
also.
they're not. You see, that a Jewish person is required, according to the law, to cover his head to show that he fears something above him, God. This is that. Look at them. I don't know if there's one covering their head, or maybe
No,
one or two. This is, and certainly no rabbis. And they made the declaration. They didn't even put God's name in the declaration. It's purely a nationalist movement. And they're using the religion simply as an intimidation tactic to stifle anybody who's speaking, and that is being played out in magnified today.
but Rabbi, allow me, please. Allow
Yes,
me, please, to bring this. It is very clear your position about Zionism, and you are an anti-Zionist. You're all the true Jewish congregations have nothing to do with secular Zionism and the state nationalism. But what would you say to someone, I insist in this question, who wants to become a Jew and he is surrounded by, I don't know what to call them, by a group, an organization who say that they are religious and that they are orthodox in a way, that's what we know about them, and goes and embraces Netanyahu and says that we're going to be with Israel and with the
right.
United States. What would you say to someone who wants to become a Jew, like this president we have? What would you say to him as a Jew? Say, hey, look, this is not. I mean, what would you say to someone, if it's
Right,
not the president, about true Judaism and fake Judaism? Make your stand, your difference between this fake
right.
Judaism and your Judaism.
Yeah. Well, first, as required of a Jew, we always are to respect and pray for the well-being of the leaders of the countries where we're residing. It's a requirement of our exit.
Okay.
So we would speak with the greatest respect, and I would be very thankful to him for his respect for the Jewish people and for the protection of the Jewish community in Argentina, and for all the good and his goodwill that he wants for the Jewish people. But I would tell him, first of all, by the way, we discourage people from becoming Jewish. It's a law in our Judaism. Anybody could read our law books for two reasons. Because the Almighty created the world. He requires of everybody to recognize that He gave Moses the Torah, which states there that you should keep the 7 commandments of Noah, which is to believe that there's one God, that not to worship idols, not to kill, not to steal, not to commit adultery, to have a court system in every land. It shouldn't be anarchy. There should be a law system in the land, and not to eat from an animal while it's still alive, while it's still shaking. So you have 7 commandments of Noah. Now, if you uphold that, it says in our law books, it says in the books of Elijah the prophet, that you will inherit the world to come. We believe there's a future world and so forth. So you will inherit this world to come. You don't have to be Jewish to serve God. But if somebody would convert, and anybody can convert to Judaism, by the way, it's contrary to what people say.
It's
But if
not ethnical. It's not ethnical. It's not racial. Anybody can
yeah,
become
right.
Jewish.
Anybody, exactly. So if somebody wants to convert, they can convert, but then they are required to uphold 630 commandments, many laws, and like, for instance, the Sabbath, which is every Sabbath, which every person who comes from a Jewish mother is required. On 6 days they work. The 7th day they're forbidden, from Friday evening sundown to Saturday, like an hour and a half
But
after
sorry,
sunset.
they do all this.
Right.
The
We're not
Lubavitch.
allowed
The
to.
Lubavitch. What is the difference between you and Lubavitch?
Wait, yes, wait. So we're not allowed to do. There's a lot of things we're not allowed to. So it's it's hard. It basically it's a strong responsibility and obligation. And if somebody is Jewish and doesn't uphold these laws, he's sinning. So we're afraid that somebody. The tendency of the world is that a person has this weakness that he sees something good and exotic. For instance, he wants to do exercise, so he buys an exercise machine, he buys a treadmill, and he does it for a week or two, and then it gets less and less, and then it starts collecting dust in the closet. A person will maybe become Jewish because it looks good. He has, and he's very enthusiastic, and then after a while, it may become too complicated, and then he'll become a sinner because he's not upholding the laws. So because of that. And also and there's once you've did the conversion to Judaism, there is no refunds, not even a 7-day trial period. And secondly, so you're a Jew for your life. And secondly, Jews, God rules the world. Everything, the tsunami, a plague, decrees, everything that happens is from God, good and bad. Everything is good from God. We just don't understand. But we believe the concept of anti-Semitism, where people harass Jews or whatever they did, it's from God to remind us that we're not here to live just a physical life of enjoyment. It's to remind us to repent, to do good. So we tell a person, you're going to become Jewish. You're going to have to uphold all the laws and never drop it, and you may suffer anti-Semitic attacks. So we discourage people from becoming Jewish usually, and it's a policy in many communities that it's not a law, but it's that they have that person practice the religion a whole year to go through the whole cycle of Judaism, and if they feel that they're still serious about it, and they say with all of these issues, we'd be proud to become a Jew. We don't, and they would want to do it, then we convert them. But we discourage it because it's absolutely not, you can serve God without being Jewish. And
So that's mainly what you would say to
I would say
someone.
now I would tell him, I would also tell him, now it's also critical. It's still, let's just say he would want to become Jewish. I mean, it's not really.
Let's talk about someone, not
Right,
him,
but
not
yeah.
someone.
So I would say to that someone, now if you think that connection to the state of Israel or support of Israel, or because you're proud of the prowess of what Israel did for these 75 years, which is mind-boggling to be proud of what they did. But if you think that this is what it means to be Jewish, then you're very mistaken, and it's not Jewish at all, and that you've got it all wrong, and certainly. There's no conversion to Judaism because that's not Judaism. That's a conversion to Satanism. It's because this is the diametric opposite. It is the contradiction of what Judaism is. Judaism is subservience to God, to believe that our whole lives are ruled by the Almighty. Everything that happens, everything good and bad, and it's to the God we turn, and that we should be pious and doing kindness to the world and not stealing the land from the Palestinians. And we are forbidden to create the state in Palestine. It's all wrong. So if there's any connection that's pushing the person to become Jewish because of he's connected with Israel or has a warmth to Israel, then he's got it all wrong. And it's not Judaism. That's an issue. Now you're asking about Lubavitch. So again, to your question and to the others, it may be seen very puzzling to people because they see the settlers and they see them and Ben Gvir and Schmutz. What is his name? What?
Schneerson.
Schmerz, yeah,
Schneerson.
and these guys who that they're that they're supposedly religious, like I said.
These guys who are with machine guns and
Right, yeah.
stealing the land, the Palestinian land, and bullying them.
Right. Now, let us remember. Now, as I explained at length, sort of, and we put out a book called The Rabbis Speak Out, which is a compilation of all the major rabbis. We have tens of thousands of rabbis. And
Are those books in Spanish translated?
You know what? It has to be translated into Spanish, and it's a compilation of the major rabbis, the leaders from all the countries around the world, including from Palestine, as I mentioned, Rabbi Sonnenfeld and Rabbi Dushinsky of blessed memory, and the next chief rabbi afterwards was Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum, who was from 1887 to 1979. So he was when after the creation of the state of Israel, and he was the chief rabbi in Palestine, but he moved to New York and he urged his followers And he remained with the mantle, with the title chief rabbi, and he held court from New York for the communities in Palestine. And he urged everybody to leave if it's possible. Hundreds of thousands couldn't leave, but that they should, if they can, they should leave and not be under this heretic, evil occupation. So he was, and so on. We have rabbis from, and everybody leaders, anybody who's religious can't deny the greatness and the Torah authorities of, for instance, the Chafetz Chaim, his name was, or the Brisker Rav, Rabbi Yitzchak Zev Soloveitchik, who was like the Ivy League of today of Torah study.
Rabbi, what percentage? How many are you in the world who are definitively against Zionism? How would you say in a percentage?
Yeah. I'm going to take it step by step. Let me just finish the thought, because here I was just here. This is I'll get to that. Like I say, here this is Rabbi Yisrael Meir Cohen, who is the codifier of religious law. Everybody uses his books. Anybody who's religious. He was from 1839 to 1933, and he wrote about Zionism, for instance. And everybody follows his teaching. Nobody can refute his greatness and his Torah authority. He said, therefore, he said, the Zionists are dead limbs of our people, which causes the entire body to rot. That's what he said. And so this is what he writes about Zionism. So basically, Zionism was totally discredited and written about by all the Torah authorities, whether they were Hasidic like me, whether they were Lithuanian type of Jews. Everybody said that is unpopular, including the Rebbes of Lubavich, by the way, which we have many of. They're all the ones. There was 7 rabbis in a period, one after the other, and that's the dynasty of Lubavitch, Chabad that you mentioned. And they all were prolific writers against Zionism till the last one, who he didn't declare himself a Zionist, but he was a problematic person who was a cult leader, and that's why Lubavitch looks like today. And I'm going to get into that. Just bear with me a second.
Oh, that's interesting. I think that's very interesting for the Argentine public.
Right,
especially.
but so now the settlers and all these people, you see them always in the news, and you hear Ben Gvir, obviously, and all these people, you see them in the news because they're up front, right at the front, and they're fighting and everything. But so you would think that you always see settlers, and they're wearing yarmulkes, they're covering their head. A lot of them, they have and beards. So you say, wow, it seems that Judaism is full, the religious Jewish is full of it. But it's totally not true. That's a mistake. The very religious communities, as I mentioned, go anywhere, to New York, to Jerusalem, to England, to Stamford Hills. Any place where you find, the more the religious, the more anti-Zionist. Most of these settlers come from what they call, if they're religious, they come from modern Orthodox, which is a euphemism for means a compromise. They compromise the religion. Or they come from non-religious. They come from universities that are idealists, so they're gullible, and they fall into the trap of Zionism that tries to conflate the religion in order to give it authenticity to their occupation. But these guys they're all on the peripheral. These are all the fringe of the Jewish communities, the core religious community. Because we are religious, because we practice the Jewish religion, we are anti-Zionist, anti the existence of the state of Israel. That's a fact. These settlers are just always in the news because they're out there on the front. They are not the core of Judaism. They are not the authorities on Judaism. And now the same thing is for the state of Israel. They created the state. They took the Star of David. They made a rabbinate and the chief rabbis in order to flaunt that they are the authorities of the religion. But that's just part of their nakba, of their catastrophe, of their falsehood. Just like they ignored the words of all the rabbis, and they went and they established the state against the will of the Jewish community that was there, and they brutally beat the religious community. This is part and parcel of what they do, that they made a rabbinate and a chief rabbis, and of course the political world and where they got their power from Britain and from the other they turned to them and say, yeah, fine, you're the rabbis, and if you're beating Jews on the street, most probably you know what you're doing. You're obviously not anti-Semitic, and you can do what you want for 75 years, and they can assassinate our rabbis, and everything's fine and dandy. But it is purely turning the truth on its head, turning the facts of history on its head. And anybody who would take the time, the simple, with base logic that God blessed them with. Common sense, you will see that the ones who are true to the Jewish religion around the world, they are opposed to Zionism. The more the religious, they're more opposed. Chabad changed. Chabad is not what Chabad was. We have the writings of the rabbis of Chabad. And we know the many Chabad people who left Chabad. But the ones today, he became a cult leader. They don't even want to admit their last rabbi, who was this problematic leader, his name was Mendelssohn, Schneerson, I'm sorry. His
Yes.
first name was Mendel Schneerson. And he died around 50 years ago. They don't even admit, many of them, that he died. They don't want to agree that he died. They held him like a cult leader, and
No, they say that he was the Messiah.
he was the Messiah. It's against Judaism. All these concepts are against Judaism, but it became a cult, and he was a controversial figure in many aspects. But he does the same like settlers. They go around the world and establish little synagogues all over the place, and professing and pushing not Judaism, a little bit Judaism, yes. I'm not going to say they tried to supposedly, but I think it's their goal that you should become Lubavitch. They have the picture of the rabbi all over the world, and they want you to become Lubavitch. And they talk about the Messiah, the Messiah, the Messiah, the Messiah. That's their whole issue, not Messiah, their Messiah. It's all a simple a cult that is similar to Judaism, basically. So if somebody become Jewish,
They've kidnapped the religion. They are a cult within using
it's another
concepts.
problematic group. But in the core religious communities, we are of course not a majority in the world. We are a very small minority in the world. Yet Judaism has lived for 3,000 years. We went through killing, murdering, trying forced conversions, but we continue on. We believe God is protecting us. We continue on through all our trials and tribulations. We will remain core and true to the truth. So you asked again of the populace how much statistically. We are a small statistic. When 100 years prior to Zionism, a movement started called Reform Judaism, which is very popular in the world today. Reform. What does reform mean? They're going to change. Now, again, we as I prefaced this, the Almighty gave us a Torah. It's from God. You can't change because you don't like the words of God. You're going to change God's words. It's ridiculous. So they're going to reform Judaism. They say Moses made the Torah. It's not from God. So it's heresy. And then they went. So the reform movement said you don't have to keep the Sabbath. You don't have to keep the 10 Commandments. You don't have to keep kosher. So you're not Jewish. Again, just like Zionists.
Well, we have the same situations in Christianity also. We have the evangelical Christians who are Zionists, and we have many sects. I mean, different interpretations.
So, but like I'm saying, I can't speak for other religions, but I can tell you clearly. So when they're coming along, well, why are they calling themselves Jewish then? If you wanted to make a religion, we're totally opposed to that because you, as a person from a Jewish mother, has to uphold the Torah. But at least don't use my name and identity.
Well, you mentioned common sense, and that I had an encounter with rabbis that I didn't know where they were from, and studying this matter for so many years, at least I became aware of the situation of the Palestinian-Israel conflict when around the year 2000. I didn't know anything before, because there's no information if you don't study or try to find it somewhere else. And I walking the street, there was a synagogue very near my where I used to live in downtown Buenos Aires, near where we met. And I said one day, well, I'm going to ask these rabbis. I saw these rabbis coming out of the synagogue, and I'm going to ask them very politely. I said, Rabbi, I said, Rabbi, I'm not a Jewish. I said, Rabbi, can I ask you a question? Yes. There were 2 or 3 rabbis, elder rabbis, and a very young, big student or something like that. And I said, why, if the Mosaic in the laws say do not steal, do not kill, why are you doing this? In the name of Jews, they are doing this situation with the Palestinians. Well, they didn't, and the guy behind them, this young guy, said, "How dare you? How dare you ask anti-Semite?" And after saying anti-Semite, he said, literally, I would kill every single Palestinian. I would kill all of them. And the only thing I could say to him was, "Oh, nice religion. Then yours is not a religion." And I went, yeah, go your way. Are you Jewish? If you're not Jewish, don't ask questions and that. But the attitude of the big guy who is still there, I know where he is. He's got his business there, his store there just beside the synagogue. So they are, and because I know now, they are one of the synagogues of the Lubavitch. He's literally said, "I will kill all the Palestinians." And this anecdote is about more
Yeah.
than 10 years ago.
Right. Well, again, so like I'm saying, it's so clear. It's with common sense, and and just if a person steps back and studies the Jewish communities, you will understand that there is something very clear that the ones who are very religious, the communities around the world, doesn't matter where you go, and including in Argentina, there's, like I said, I was there. There's a beautiful little community there. Um,
Yeah, I asked you about it.
Yes, and
And
I asked, they actually approached the rabbis there, and I said, why don't you go out and demonstrate, just like, because they're students of the chief rabbi of Palestine, and we were told to
if
go
you
out and
can
demonstrate.
connect me with them, if you can connect me with, I would be very grateful
So,
because I would like
but
to
they're
know.
afraid. They told us, and because, and
Oh yeah,
rightfully so. I was just now this last evening. I was at a meeting, in a town hall meeting. That there was a whole. It's a whole story. They put up a sign, "Free Palestine," on a billboard, and Zionists came and they started yelling
yeah,
against it and so forth. They took it down, and so the town hall very naively said, "Oh, so it's anti-Semitism going on here." So they're going to put out a resolution against anti-Semitism. So there was a town hall in the Palestinian community, the Arab community, called me to come along, and we went with a few rabbis, went out there. And we said, what I'm saying to you, of course, we have to make much more concise. And we explained this Judaism and there's Zionism, and we are, and what they're doing, the slaughter of the people of Palestine, is
yeah.
satanic. It has no ratification, has no
Okay, we come to a point where I have to make the uncomfortable question.
yeah, but wait, let me just finish with this. So what you're saying about
But
Lubavitch and so forth,
yeah, okay,
very, very clear. Lubavitch in its teachings, and the ones who are true for the old Lubavitch, they are anti-Zionist. They will never accept it. What you're finding today is, and there is maybe even people from Chabad today who still be anti-Zionist, but they go around trying to bring people into the folds who are non-religious and so forth. So and so these people, a lot of them are so ignorant, and they just, so they buy into the Zionist propaganda and and Chabad propaganda, which Chabad says like this. They're not going to say the Zionists, the ones who know something, but we have to protect ourselves because the Arabs want to kill us. So they use all these Zionist propaganda, talking points. Now, as I was before, I was in the middle of just explaining. Reform Judaism came, that they're going to change Judaism. Now, so how could you call it Judaism if you're reforming? It's not Judaism. They should have called themselves another name. But again, because it's the works of Satan, just like Zionism is. So they're using the religion. And so in order to gain legitimacy, so they started ordaining like rabbis, ministers, sometimes they call rabbis and ministers, and they made them temples. So instead of synagogues, they call them temples, sometimes they call them synagogues, and they do all of that so it should give the aura that of Judaism, but it's purely not.
but
They reform.
by their fruits you shall know them, said Jesus. Jesus said, "By their fruits you
So
shall
they
know
have
who they are."
So they have this. It's purely not Judaism. Yet they consider themselves a legitimate branch of Judaism, Reform Judaism. Then another movement started, and it became very popular, like 250 years ago. And it spread like wildfire because it was very convenient for people. They didn't know their religions, and it became very convenient because they tried to assimilate. They cut off the beards, most of them entirely, and they started dressing like they wanted to assimilate into the Christian society, that they should be accepted and looked at as with respect. It didn't work that well, but anyway, where they tried to do it in Austria and Vienna, and maybe from God, he sent Hitler from there to show in the elite society of Germany, it's God's hand. If you would like, this is just, what it doesn't say this in the books, but God showed that these are the ones who created reform, that you should assimilate and drop the religion. And there is where Hitler came from and said, your grandfather was a Jew, into Auschwitz. So it didn't help that assimilation. Maybe it was from God to show. And in Hungary, where they were the most religious, was almost 1 million people were killed. The 750,000 Jews lived there, but still in all, it was the least that was affected by by that the Nazis murdered millions of Jews. That was the last that they went. So I'm just saying, the hands of God. But reform is not Judaism yet. They're coming along. And they call it reform, the changing. From that, by the way, these Zionists came from those children of these people who are non-religious mostly, and they come along and they said, well, assimilation is not working, so we'll try something else. And they'll try Zionism, not because they want to return to God, to the Holy Land, that they have a connection with God in the Holy Land. They simply want another angle of ignoring God and protecting themselves, they say, with the gun. And when they look at a religious Jew comes along, we say, what do you mean? God is our protection. What are you doing? God says, I protect you in exile. So they say, yeah, where was God in all these hundreds of years? Where was God? So they spew heresy, and that is the core, that is the essence of what Zionism is. And that is, and so now Lubavitch comes along, and they back and they stand together with the Zionists. So they're just and again, and the settlers come along, and again, but they're not they're what they call modern Orthodox, some of them, and but they're basically, which means a compromised religion. And so it's the core essence of Judaism, not to rebel against God, not to steal and kill, not to make a state. So they're basically they're rebelling against that.
They have politicized also
So
the
they're
Judaism.
basically not. So all these groups that you're asking in bewilderment, how could this be? They all look religious. Yes, we are a core little group. The reform is today the majority of Jews, unfortunately. We may be the religious Jews who are true to the Torah, or maybe 10%, 15%, maybe that. How could that be? It doesn't matter. Abraham was one. It says, Maimonides writes that Abraham was one against the whole world that worshipped idol worship. We will continue. We believe that we will not forsake God, and God will not forsake us. We will continue with our religion. Eventually, they will fall to the side. Reform will disappear. Chabad, as it is, will disappear. The settlers will disappear. The state of Israel will end. It says in the Torah, why are you rebelling against me? It will not be successful. It says this in the Torah. You can't rebel against God. So the state of Israel will end. The Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, USSR that tried to stifle religion and send people to Siberia if they preached about God, they ended. Anything that's standing, that looks like it's etched in marble, it doesn't mean anything. The superpowers end. But God remains always the same, and we are remaining true to God, and the religion was saying so. Even though we are a minority, I can't tell you the exact numbers, but we are a minority, but we are the core of religion from Jerusalem that are still there fighting tooth and nail against the Zionists, to our communities in Argentina or New York, or wherever it may be, in South America, wherever it may be, the core religious communities, sometimes a little pocket of it, a small community, sometimes larger, like in New York, we have the second largest community to the ones in Jerusalem. Again, no Israeli flag in our communities. We will remain true to Judaism, and this is what Judaism is. All the rest are just names, people using the name of Judaism to commit crimes, whether it is Reform Judaism, whether it is Zionism, whatever it may be. They should stop using my identity falsely. That's all there is to say about that.
Good. Thank you so much, Rabbi. But if you have time, I have to make you a
Yes.
big question about the Torah, which we understand, at least historians, secular historians, people who are not in the theological thing knowledge. But I have to make the question. I mean, all these religious Zionists, if they're not religious, fake religious, whatever, they are looking at the Torah and those famous versicles in Deuteronomy and Joshua that say, because I understand that these books were written in the case of war, how to behave when there was war, about everybody out of context, I mean, in the context, historical context, wars are wars, and they were like they were. This is not a war. This one here now with Palestinians is not a war. This is just plain genocide. But what was written in the Torah about, what to do with the neighbors that had false idols, kill everybody, don't leave sucklings, babies, women, kill all of them. I mean, what can you say about this? About
Yeah, with the
how
help,
do you
right.
come up away from this?
Yeah, with the help of the Almighty, we are Jews. Everything we do is because we believe it's God's world. He gave us a Torah. It's not our Torah. God gave it to us. Now we part. It's integral. He gave it to us. So it is ours. But we are. It's exactly what God expects of us. We respect our father and our mother because, and people scorn us and laugh at us about this and ridicule us. We do it because it's part of the Ten Commandments. It's the Ten Commandments. God told us that we have to respect our parents. And somebody says, "Oh, you're respecting your parents not because you want to respect. You're doing because God said yes. Everything we do is because it's God's world and He's giving us life. We're breathing and we're doing everything according to the laws of God. Some of the laws of God we understand. Some of them we don't. It's brought down. They have a name. It's called chok, mishpat. Chok means things that we don't know the reason for. We don't know why God wants us to do certain commandments. Why? And sometimes people try to explain commandments and understand them. We try to comprehend what we can. For instance, that we're not allowed to eat non-kosher. It says reasons for that. It does, but in certain commandments that it totally doesn't say the reason. Yeah, that's basics of Judaism. It happens to be that when the Jews were taken out of Egypt and God said that we have to go into the Holy Land, He said it's a holy land and it's His world, and therefore He expects that the people being there will not worship idols, and He said anybody who wanted to remain there, not from the Jewish religion, anybody, as long as they don't worship idol, they can remain there. The rest have to leave. Now there are other commandments that they had to be wiped out with, and which you're talking and different issues. All of this, first of all, has absolutely nothing to do with life as with the issues of today, because the issue of the Jews leaving Egypt and going into the Holy Land, the Jews were reluctant to go in. The Erev Rabbah was called a certain group of them, and therefore the Jews were punished that 40 years they had to go in the wilderness. Then it came the time that they went in, and the Jews went in. It didn't happen because of the power, physical power. Joshua went around the walls of Jericho 7 times, and they sunk in. So everything was being led by God. It's God's world. Not everything we comprehend. None of that. But whatever it is, the concept of going to the land, and the concept ended with when we were sent into exile 2,000 years ago. And we are all these laws that about going in and taking over the land. This has nothing to do with us. So if we don't comprehend everything of the Torah, let's just put that. That's an issue.
Aside, you choose to put that aside.
Yeah, I mean, we study it, we try to comprehend, but it has absolutely no connection with today our existence in exile. It has nothing to do with that evil person Netanyahu, who goes to the UN and starts rolling his eyes and talking about how God gave us the land and we are and again waving the Torah as it's our land and like a psychological warfare that to dismiss and delegitimize the Palestinians' ownership of the land because God gave us the land. He's a criminal with that. He is Madoff, Madoff, the one who could. He's totally falsifying the Torah because all the rabbinical authorities who are living in Palestine, as I showed you before, the chief rabbi of Palestine pleaded with the United Nations. He said, we furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. We have no right to take the land away from the Palestinian people. We believe ultimately at the end of time, God will reveal His glory and all humanity together will serve God. God will build the temple, but we have no right today to take that land away from a people. And what will happen in the future will be the will of all humanity. So this whole concept of his using the words of Amalek, of murdering children,
Oh yeah, Amalek.
all these things that that you're talking about,
they use it all the time.
that whatever all these concepts of the Torah, that is malicious and vicious and false. He has no right to use the words of the Torah. I'm reluctant to get into the explanations of all the words of the Torah, because first of all, some of it we understand, some of it we don't understand. What God willed of his God is compassionate. Why would God in the Torah that he gave us write certain things that seem that it's against compassion or whatever? First of all, a lot of it is falsely understood. For instance, an eye, even in the concept of an eye for an eye, other people translate it literally that it means if somebody knocks out one person's eye, you have knocked out his eye. Jewish teaching is clear. It doesn't mean that. An eye for an eye means the cost. They evaluate the cost of an eye, and he has to pay them back. It's totally never such a translation in the Torah. There's a lot of commands that we don't understand. Some of them we do, but and some of it that is relevant to today, like damage you have to pay. If somebody does damage.
Yes, I read that. I read that. Yeah.
But these concepts that he's talking about, Amalek and all these things, are an issue of the Messianic times, which the Muslim leadership always knew that the Jews are not dangerous because of this, because it's a metaphysics. There will be a end of time. There will be a miraculous change in the world. It has nothing. The Zionists are using the Torah falsely. There's like the Reform takes the Torah and uses it falsely. Zionism uses the word falsely. They're taking the Torah and saying, it means this, it means that, and you can, and we have a right to throw out the Palestinians because of Amalek. You evil person! You don't keep the 10 Commandments. You don't keep the Sabbath. You viciously beat religious Jews. You're murderers. You're thieves and everything. And then you go and you talk the words of the Torah. But they're counting on the ignorance, the lack of knowledge of the masses, and they're counting on the backing of Satan, pure satanic, because it defies logic. And give me this: that when the United Nations was created, just prior to the creation of the ratification of the State of Israel, it was created after World War I and World War II, when they saw this terrible mass murder of millions and millions and millions of people around the world, world wars, and they said we have to have a body. First was the League of Nations, that we have to have a body of nations that we should be able to adjudicate the problems of the world peacefully. So they go ahead and they create the United Nations. And one of the first things they did was to ratify and establish a state of Israel, which means that the largest community, which today everybody knows, because the Zionists had this false narrative that it was an empty land. But everybody knows that there were over 500 villages that were wiped off the map by the Zionists. The largest community were Muslims. The second were Christians, and the third were Jews. All three of these communities, but let's just put the Jewish community aside if you want to. The Zionists,
they were a small minority,
but they were the minority. So you're going to establish a state of Israel, meaning that a section of this land, let's just say divided in half. You're going to take half of the Palestine, and all the people that are living there that were Muslims, we're talking about the majority, they're going to become second-class citizens automatically. Psychologically, because if it's the state of Israel, meaning that their religion is secondary. They have no. How could a United Nations that are intelligent people, leaders of the world, get together and establish a state of Israel? They should be calling it a state.
That was crazy. I mean, this is the origin of
what
all.
I'm saying is, it defies logic. It's satanic, and from that day till today, we are suffering the repercussions of this establishment of the state, death and suffering. Why? Because of a selfish, flawed political movement called Zionism that scorns, ridicules, belittles the Jewish authority, the beautiful and distinguished holy rabbis of around the world who are the leaders of Judaism, because they are the leaders of the religion, and they were the leaders for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and they're taking these people and in the stroke of the pen, all of a sudden, then nothing, and the leaders is Zionism, the state of Israel, and the rabbis that they voted in or they're paying for, and they totally running a show of murder, of occupation, of oppression of the Palestinian people and of the Jewish people who refuse to accept their rule. And so this is ongoing for 75 years. And then you get this October 7, everybody says, whoa, Hamas. we are insulting common sense,
Yes.
normal thinking
They
of
created
the
that
world.
hatred. They created
They've
with
been
the
75
occupation.
years you're murdering, 75 years you're
Yeah.
killing. And it culminates with what should have happened is October 7th. The next day, the authorities around the world, the thinkers, the think tanks, the ones who will consider, I don't want to call them the rabbis of their communities, should say, enough is enough. We let you take the leadership, the reins for 75 years because we bought into your narrative that you're the ones who are going to bring peace, and you're and what's happening? Death and death and death, and it just and you came today. October 7th was the most death in one attack since the
No.
Holocaust. So if that's the case, so you were failure, and obviously it's not the route to go. The route to go is to look why for hundreds of years Jews lived together with Muslims in peace without any human rights groups to protect us. We lived with the Arabs in peace, and
And before that,
and
even
before.
before that, in Jesus' time also,
So,
because
and now you have, and now
you
you
weren't the Jewish weren't the only tribe there in the Holy Land. There were other people
So I'm
from
saying,
other.
but we lived in the Holy Land, certainly in Palestine, besides other Arab and Muslims, but over there we lived in peace. Now you're coming along since the advent of Zionism, which is 107 years since the Balfour Declaration, where they started moving in, not 75 years, and certainly not from October 7th. We're
Oh,
talking
no.
75 years and 107 years, and they
Yeah.
started moving in and committing a trial, taking over there. First, they bought land, but when the Muslim community and the Arab community saw that they're buying their land because they have an agenda to create a state, so
Yeah.
they
They
stopped.
bought the land, but they didn't include the Palestinians as working.
Right.
They
And so
would.
then there was the Sabra Shaltila massacre and so on and so forth. So it became a point of contention, and the Arab community said, "No, we don't want to sell you anymore." When they were selling to Jews land, it wasn't a problem because they were their friends. But all of a sudden, they realized these people is something else entirely. It's an occupation, and they refused. And since the advent of Zionism, I'm stressing this because people say,
Which
"How
is
come
European.
in
Let's
1924?"
clarify that it was a Europeans. It was a European
Well,
problem
we
and a
can get into that
European
also.
occupation.
Right, but basically, exactly. But I'm saying, so in 1924 they'd say there was a massacre. How come it was before the state of Israel? So it's because they hate the Jews? No, it was deep into Zionism already. In the 1890s they started coming up, and even a little earlier than that, and they started occupying and occupying. So by 1924, our rabbis. We have the writings of our rabbis and the statements of our rabbis who were in Hebron, and Khalil,
Mm.
where they said they were witness and they bore testimony that they were living together in peace in Hebron. Rabbi Kaplan of blessed memory, one of the great rabbis who established one of the greatest school systems for girls based at Jacob, and he said, we lived in peace, and the Zionists came and started agitating. They came with guns into Hebron, and therefore there was a massacre because there was a pogrom, because because the Arab people didn't know to differentiate between Jews and the Zionists, because the Zionists willfully put on this pretense that they're representing Judaism. Now, we're not condoning what happened in Hebron, God forbid, the murder of the Jews there,
No, of
but it's
course.
purely because of Zionism. So Zionism has the blood of the hands of the Arabs, of the Muslims, of the Palestinians, and of Jews for 107 years already. They have blood on their hands, and so they are the personification of anti-Semitism. They kill, they murder,
Of
they
course.
beat the Arabs and the Jews, and they are the cause of the exacerbation of anti-Semitism.
Yes.
They are anti-Semitism personified. How ironic that the world says anything against Zionists are anti-Semitic. They are the anti-Semitism. They are the oven of creating and baking and forming anti-Semitism in the
They
world.
are committing genocide to
They're
the
committing
true Semite.
genocide. But they are the evil in its essence, and it's satanic because the world went along and ratified such a thing, which had been a body of intelligent people. How did they do that? So you see,
Well,
it's only satanic, and
this
it's
is the
satanic
power
what's
of the
happening
media.
today. What's happening today is satanic. It's
Satanic,
satanic. There's no
absolutely.
other words.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Well, okay, and just to round up, and thank you so much for your generosity, and I hope that we can contact someday again, because I'm sure that we have some more things to talk about. I'm sure that when I listened to this interview again, I said, "Oh, why didn't we talk about this and that?" But I think we have been quite. It has been quite interesting. And just to round up the interview, what what future do you see? Because I think it's is it correct in English? Inviable, the Israeli Zionist project after this genocide is impossible that it will go on. I mean they have signed they're finished after this. I can't conceive them going on unless this becomes a world conflict. Everybody is rejecting. I mean, anybody with common sense, with with a good heart, cannot be in favor of this infanticide. They are killing children. I mean, they don't care less. They are bombing from the air, cowardly, killing civilians in a proportion which is uh, absolutely everybody. Nobody has seen this before, and it is filmed, and there is footage of this because of the cell phones, and everybody is watching this in Telegram and different um, medias. Alternative medias, and everybody can see the amount of terrible hatred and awful this is. And what how does this, what is your view, how do you think this will go on in the future? What do you see in the future for Israel and for this problem,
Well,
for the Palestinians, of course?
with the help of the Almighty, we're not prophets. We can only state. Uh, One of my great rabbis, Rabbi Beck of blessed memory, passed away a few years ago, and he was a great leader and he was a Holocaust survivor, by the way. He was, and also he moved afterwards to Palestine, and he was one of the great leaders in the anti-Zionist movement. And then when he moved away from there, not to be with his family, he shouldn't be under the occupation. And he lived in my area in New York, and a very holy man. When people would ask certain questions about the solution and things, he would say, I'm reluctant to get into that, because if you don't agree, or you may feel that it's flawed in the resolution for this. So then you may say that my whole thesis, my whole basis is also wrong, and therefore I would like to distinctly disconnect what we're talking in the future from what was. Let us just understand clearly that Zionism and Judaism are diametric opposites. Judaism is religion, subservience to God. Zionism is a transformation to national occupation. Judaism opposes Zionism. It's unacceptable. It's evil. Zionism is evil, and the state of Israel, which is the culmination of the ideology of Zionism, it's all evil. It's not Judaism. Finished. It's diametric opposites. It's unacceptable. That said, now we believe that it will end, as I've mentioned. In the Torah, it says, "Why are you rebelling against me?" It will not be successful. We are certain the state of Israel will be totally removed from the scene. There will not be a state of Israel in the future. But we're not.
They will be peacefully. I think they
Yes.
will be peacefully dismantled.
Well,
They will.
that's on my card. Yes, on my
Yeah.
card I have we write on the bottom of my card. I always have um, pray for the speedy and peaceful dismantlement of the state of Israel. That's
I love that. I love that phrase. I love
that's
it.
what so we hope for that, and we pray to God who's compassionate, that just like the apartheid, there was killing and stuff, but at the end of the day, and people said, how will they be able to, if they remove apartheid,
Love.
slaughter of the whites and this that, and obviously it was just a panic call, and thank God it was removed and it ended. And today nobody, and by the way, the United Nations also had gave respect to the South Africa as an apartheid
Oh
state
yeah.
for tens of years, and the ones who opposed it were considered criminals, and Nelson Mandela was 27 years in prison as
In
a terrorist,
prison, yeah.
and so on. So I'm just saying that the world could accept an evil, something that's totally clearly to the eyes of a child understands it, and yet the world accepts it. In the United Nations, they accept it.
Yeah,
So we have to
normalized.
know that just because the world, it's something is popular and accepted, doesn't mean that it is legitimate or right. And
Exactly.
therefore, just that was, and nobody
Amen.
would dare establish an apartheid today. The same thing with the state of Israel. The state of Israel will end. It's evil, it's unacceptable, and it's certainly not Jewish. It's against Judaism. That's first of all. Now, what we have to remember that it wasn't so long ago, till the advent of Zionism, Jews and Muslims lived together. So the clear difference, the distinct difference between our religion is not of our religions is not an impediment to coexistence. We live
No,
together. So
not
we
at all.
simply have to, and I thank God met, and I went to the Shia Muslim communities, the Sunni Muslim communities, whether it was in the Al Azhar University, the Grand Mufti of Al Azhar, or I went to the leadership in Hezbollah, to Hamas. We were all over the world, and everyone professes they are not against Jews. They want freedom, and that is and these are the leadership. It's not the Wild West. The communities of Palestine. These are all beautiful, good-hearted uh, and people.
People.
And they want, everybody wants peace, and they remember the history with Jews, and that they're above what's called good, because of that, to be lauded, because they still profess that they're not against Jews. They want peace. They want to live with it. We simply have to remove the impediment to peace. The impediment to peace of the Zionist state of Israel is only in power because Western and governments and other people are feeding them bombs, feeding them um, 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 uh, ammunition, and they're being supported by the vicious attack, the false attack of anti-Semitism. If you will remove all of these in 1 minute, most
Yes,
probably they
you can stop.
will be. They
You can
just
stop the carnage. You can stop the genocide.
stop
But the
everything.
United States
It
is
has to be simply a meeting. I've heard a lot of Arab and Muslim leaders said, "All we have to have is this is supposed to be Jewish. Jewish. Let the leaders of Judaism, together with the leaders of the Islamic faith, let us all get together, sit down, and try to work out how we can have a free country. It can be done. It will be done. And,
yeah, it will be done.
from in the Torah, there's a statement that says, "From bitter comes sweet." Sometimes we had to come to this point of degradation, of the pit of the hell that we are in now, what we are witnessing, and maybe from here the world will stand up and say this cannot go on, and that the only way that it could be a solution, as I say, is the total removal of the concept of occupation, of free Palestine. We want, would it that this program and so forth, this should get to the people of Gaza and of Palestine. They should know, Palestine, our hearts are with you, Palestine. Not just me. This is not my view. This is the view of the religious Jews around the world. We pray every day in our prayers for the
Amen.
removal of the Zionist state of Israel entirely. God should help peacefully and speedily, and a free Palestine. We are waiting, yearning for until we can turn to the Palestinian people, say, here is your homes, here's your life, here's and of course apologize for what's being done in our name, and that they should have their freedom. Of course, we can't bring back the dead, but God
To
needs,
share the land, to
yeah,
share the Holy Land in
right. And
peace.
that should be in the freedom. And we would humbly ask them their permission that we should be able to live amongst them. And
That's
that
so
is
nice.
what we as Jews have to do. And that is the way
Nice.
it will be eventually. How it will come about, I can't exactly say, but it's certainly essential, critical, that the world has to hear, that we have to get the message out to it, that they're being conned and duped, and that, or maybe colluding, God forbid, with an evil force by supplying them with the ammunition and supporting them in their occupation. If you will remove that support, this I believe it will not be able to exist, and automatically the world will turn to the simple, practical way of coexisting, because
Yes,
the religion
yes,
is
of
not an
course.
impediment.
It's so
History
simple.
tests.
So simple. We don't have to lose our faith in love and justice and rightfulness, because in front of this horrible satanic genocide, we that's what they want. Surely it's because it's so satanic, so evil, that I think it's like spiritual. We're talking about a spiritual situation, not only a political situation.
Yeah,
It's spiritual. It's like it's so evil that he has taken his mask off and he's showing how evil he is. I'm not talking about Netanyahu himself. I'm talking about the evil entity that is ruling, is trying to rule the world and scare us all away. And we haven't talked about a one world government and all so many things that we can talk about very interestingly. But thank you very much, Rabbi. It is so wonderful and so necessary to speak with someone of the Jewish community who has a very such a clear position. Thanks God, there are so other many students now who are Jewish. This awareness that has lightened up in the United States. I remember when I first started translating Norman Finkelstein, and he was expelled from his university, his tenure, and things were so different like 15 years ago. So there is a hope when we see all these student movements starting in the United States, like against Vietnam. I think we have to mobilize. We have to struggle for peace, like an old uh, pro-peace movement, secular, religious, whatever. We have all common sense in common. So I am very grateful. Rabbi, please bear with me just a few minutes after we end
yeah.
this recording, because I want to make contact with
Yes, I
some
would
people.
also, yeah, like we'd love to come to the South America, Latin America, and go to, to come again to Argentina, Chile, all these different countries to be able to speak in universities. Of course, we don't charge for our speaking. We would love to come and to educate, to be able to give people the courage that they should not be intimidated, and when they're accused of being anti-Semitic, they should understand the distinct difference between Judaism and Zionism, and it should give them the support that they should be able to speak up for the issue, for the people of Palestine, until God, with His compassion, um, brings a free Palestine. That we should do what we have to, because we urge every, first of all, to pray to the Almighty that He should bring a speedy and peaceful end of this occupation. Of course, a ceasefire immediately in Gaza.
Yeah.
But till that day comes, we have to. We dare not be silent. We have to speak up.
No.
We have to do what we can, and don't be intimidated. It's not
Mm.
anti-Semitic. And so really you can always turn to our communities and say, ask anybody, how come it's the very religious Jews are anti-Zionist? So how could you dare say it's anti-Semitic? And always use us as an example. Use our writings. Take our writings from our site, nkusa.org. You can go to our site and spread our word. We please spread our word as much as you can, and call us. We would love to come all over to conferences, to universities. We're always willing to come any part of the world to some, and
That's
especially
so nice. It's so
Palestine.
nice, Rabbi, for you to
Thank
say
you.
that. I wish I could organize it myself. I'm going to try to see if that we can make that happen with some other organizations. That would be fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your
God
generosity,
bless.
for
Thank
your kindness. It's been an honor for me and a pleasure to be
you.
with you, because you are so important in this moment. So important. You know that you are so important,
Thank you.
fundamental.